We run approximately 8,000 DSCs in an average year. We have cattle because they're wonderful for landscape and they're really improving our carrying capacity and improving our vegetation. We were unhappy with the amount of money we were making, we were working long hours, and our landscape we were just very, very unhappy with that. It was really degraded in our eyes. That's what drove us to change from where we were, from a set stock system. We didn't go straight into cell centres. We went into dividing our paddocks up and then rotating our stock around. Now we're to the stage where we say, well, we're really, really happy to do a cell centre. It's a really effective use of water and we'll cut our paddocks in half again. Well, we set up cell centres as an effective use of water and watering 4 or 5 or 6 different paddocks. The reason we set them up like this was they could work for sheep and cattle and give us diversity and options going forward. Water is certainly the key in this environment, in a dry environment. We've got to have good quality water and then the stock can utilise all the vegetation. The cell centres are a tool and make it easy for us to shift stock from one paddock to the next. This quarter will be the next paddock we will look to graze. So we'll remove those fence breaks, simply encourage the stock here into the cell centre. They'll recognise that that area is open, they'll wander through into that paddock and I'll provide a little bit of pressure behind them to make sure that they just keep moving into that paddock. Then when they're all through the cell centre, I'll take the tape from there and put it across this quarter, stopping them going back into the other paddock.
And the good thing I like about this is that there's so few places that you have to check. So we've got 3 places to check on 12,500 hectares. So to do our water run, we've got to go 3 places. In arid zone rangelands, we don't want to have a second bite of any plant that's really trying to sink its roots back down to get re-established. But you've got less chance of that happening because the stock density is not as great.
Certainly we find with rest, we get much better plant growth right up into the waters and really you should, because that's where there's good disturbance and there's good amount of nutrients.
What we really want to get away from is big spikes and big troughs in the nutrient cycle of the year of the animal. And we'd like to take those big troughs into gentle oscillations. So we go into a paddock, we spend a week in a paddock here, we get the best out of the start of the week, at the end of the week that's enough. And we move on to the next one. So you can imagine there's 52 little bumps over the year. That's not going to be a problem in tensile strength of wool. It can cope with that. Most places that you would come across could have a fence put up the middle of every paddock. So double your number of paddocks. You see, if you have 10 paddocks to start with, you're grazing 1 and resting 9. Cut them all in half, you're grazing 1 and resting 19. And cut them all in half and you're grazing 1 and resting 39. And so you have far longer rest. And that's pretty much with these sensitive plants here is what you want. So when we've got to make a decision here about when to shift these mobs, we're not looking at where they're at, we're looking at where they're going to.
Some other indicators within the paddock, such as livestock behaviour. Normally when they're running short of feed, they're around the water more often for long periods of time. That's giving me an indication they're not really happy with the vegetation.
What we want is the animal to walk off as least weight as possible. So in this country, we're not so much thinking about putting weight on as losing as least weight as possible. And right now we've got a distance from here to the back of the paddock of a few kilometres. So that's pretty ideal. But when you've got country that one corner never seems to get a grazing because it's just too far to go without water, well, it's a waste of country for a start. And if you can get some water there somehow, you can stop them having to walk so far, and they will then put on a whole lot more weight because they're not trying to stretch themselves to get way out the back and get that good grazing and then have to zip back in for water. You can imagine how much energy they're burning up in walking.
Rotational grazing, the things that go with that is low stress stock handling, pasture monitoring, keeping an eye on your landscape, monitoring and budgeting your food. If you can make those things work, the simplicity and the labour costs that it decreases. Our annual cost for checking water here under a set stock system might be $40,000 or $50,000 a year. That's a big number to play with, and that's on a fairly small number of stock. In hindsight, there's no doubt that our stock weren't ready to be put together in large mobs in a rotational grazing system. It was only after we did a low stress stock handling school that we were able to work with them and teach them how to behave as a
mob in larger stock densities and be comfortable to come in water. Now if we hadn't gone through that, we couldn't have then taken the next step to put in smaller cell centres, because that would have been far too much pressure and we would have lost far too much productivity.
We don't clean our troughs. The stock are in here at the moment for a week in each paddock, so there's approximately 4 weeks in this paddock. The rest of the time these troughs are empty, water turned off. Mother Nature comes and cleans it out with the sunlight, baking the algae. So there's no cleaning, no maintenance on these troughs. If you can find a system that can build your carrying capacity, build your landscape, reduce some of your labour, then you're starting to get close to where you want to be and finding a system that works for you. To put it simply, for us it's just been a major time saver and made us more money in our business. It's a fantastic tool to deliver that.